Okay, so, we love diving deep into the stuff you send our way.
Yeah.
And today's no different, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're tackling something pretty cool, thinking directly in English.
Right.
And we've got some awesome materials you sent over that are all about just that helping folks move past, that constant translating in their heads.
Yeah.
To find a way to just, be more fluent, more natural with English.
It's a big one.
It is. And, it's not just about speed, although that's definitely a part of it. It's also about being able to really get those idioms and those nuances that can trip you up if you're always stopping to decode everything word for word.
For sure.
So before we get into the how-to, the actual techniques, let's lay the groundwork here.
Okay.
Can you talk a bit about why relying on translation can actually hold someone back from becoming really fluent?
Yeah, definitely. So, in the early stages of learning English, it's totally natural to lean on translation.
Mm-hmm.
You're basically creating a bridge between the language, and this new language you're trying to master. But at a certain point, that bridge can become kind of a bottleneck.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah, so think of it this way. Every time you have to formulate a thought in your native language and then translate it into English, you're adding an extra step. Right?
Right.
And in a fast-paced conversation, that can really slow you down.
Yeah, and those pauses, those little gaps, when you're searching for the right word, they can make things feel awkward.
Exactly. And, sometimes it's not even just about finding the word, it's about piecing together the whole sentence in a way that sounds natural in English.
Right. It's like the mental gears are grinding a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be really frustrating.
And can make you less likely to want to speak up.
Absolutely. It can impact your confidence big time. And you might even start to avoid certain situations where you have to speak English.
Which is the opposite of what we want, right? We want people to feel empowered to use the language.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned idioms earlier, and I know that was a big focus in the materials you sent over.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a bit? Why are idioms particularly tricky when you're relying on translation?
So idioms, they're those expressions that have a meaning that goes beyond the literal meanings of the individual word.
Right, like raining cats and dogs.
Exactly. That's a perfect example.
If you try to translate that word for word, it just doesn't make sense in most other languages.
It sounds totally crazy, right?
It does.
But to a native English speaker, it paints a very vivid picture of really heavy rain.
So to really grasp an idiom, you need to understand the concept behind it, not just the individual words.
Exactly. And that's where thinking directly in English comes in.
So it's almost like building a new mental pathway.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of that English word being a stand-in for a word in your native language, it's directly linked to the image or the idea.
That's a great way to put it. And the more you can strengthen those direct connections, the less you'll rely on that translation crutch.
Okay, so let's get practical now.
Yeah, let's do it.
The materials you shared outline some really cool 5-minute exercises that people can start using right away to shift their thinking.
Yeah, these are great for kind of jumpstarting that process.
The first one is called Labeling Your World, and it seems deceptively simple.
It is simple, but that's the beauty of it.
How does just naming things around you in English help rewire your brain?
Well, it all comes down to that direct connection we were talking about earlier. When you look at, let's say, a lamp on your desk and you consciously think lamp in English,
Yeah.
you're bypassing that translation step and directly linking the visual image with an English word.
It's like creating a shortcut in your brain.
Exactly, and your brain loves shortcuts. The more you use that pathway, the stronger it gets.
And in the materials, it was suggested to take it a step further by adding descriptive words.
Oh yeah, that's a great way to build on that foundation.
So instead of just lamp, it's bright lamp or tall lamp.
Right, and you can even start combining words into short phrases. The bright lamp on my desk.
Yeah. So you're not just learning words in isolation, you're actually starting to think in English sentences.
Exactly, and that's a huge step towards fluency.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The next technique is inner monologue. And I admit this one feels a little weird to me.
I get it. It can feel a little strange at first, but trust me, it's super effective.
Okay, so what exactly does it involve?
So basically, you're just narrating your actions and thoughts to yourself in English throughout the day.
So like, I'm walking to the kitchen, I'm opening the fridge, I'm pouring myself a glass of water.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be complex or grammatically perfect. The key is to get into that habit of formulating your thoughts directly in English.
So it's almost like having a little English commentator in your head.
I love that analogy. It's like your own personal language coach.
And it's a safe space to practice, right? No one else is listening, so you can make mistakes without feeling self-conscious.
Exactly. And the more you do it, the more natural it'll start to feel.
Okay, I'm willing to give it a try. The third 5-minute exercise is word association.
This one's all about building connections within the English language itself. So let's say you see the word book. Instead of translating it into your native language, you immediately try to think of other English words related to book.
Like read, page, library.
Exactly. You're creating a web of associations in your mind.
So the word book becomes a trigger for a whole network of English vocabulary.
Right, and that helps you access those words more quickly and naturally when you're speaking or writing.
Okay, so we've got these targeted exercises that people can use to kind of kickstart the process of thinking in English.
Right.
But the materials you shared also emphasize making this a part of everyday life.
Oh, absolutely. Consistency is key here.
So what are some practical habits that can help reinforce this way of thinking?
One really powerful suggestion is to switch your phone's language to English for a week.
Ooh, that's a bold move.
It is, but think about how much time you spend on your phone every day.
Way too much, probably.
Right, so suddenly you're interacting with English, constantly checking your messages, browsing social media, even just navigating the settings menu.
It's like a mini immersion experience.
Exactly, and you'll be surprised how quickly you start to pick up new vocabulary without even really trying.
That's cool. Another habit you mentioned is incorporating English language audio into your morning routine.
This is a great way to get that passive exposure to the language. So while you're getting ready for your day, listen to English news podcasts, audiobooks, music with English lyrics, anything that gets you hearing the language.
So even if you're not actively focusing on the words, your brain is still absorbing the sounds and the rhythms.
Exactly. It's like soaking up the language through osmosis.
I like that. And the last daily habit you mentioned involves dreams, which I find super intriguing.
Yeah, this one's a bit different, but it can be really powerful.
So what's the idea here?
The suggestion is to jot down 3 English sentences about your dreams every morning.
Okay.
Dreams can be very visual and conceptual, right?
Yeah, often totally nonsensical too.
Yeah, right. But trying to describe them in English, even if they're weird or random, forces you to think creatively with the language.
It's like a low-pressure way to practice expressing yourself in English.
Exactly. And it can also help you tap into that subconscious part of your brain where a lot of language learning happens.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we've got these targeted exercises and these daily habits. But what about those moments when you're in a conversation and you just hit a wall?
Yeah.
You can't, for the life of you, remember the right English word.
That's going to happen. It's totally normal.
It's super frustrating, though.
It is, but the key is to not panic.
Easier said than done.
I know, but the worst thing you can do is let that frustration take over.
So what should you do instead?
First, take a breath, pause for a moment, collect your thoughts.
That pause can feel like an eternity in a conversation.
It can, but it gives you a chance to reset and avoid that knee-jerk reaction of switching back to your native language.
Okay, and after you pause, what's next?
Try to visualize the concept you're trying to express instead of fixating on that one missing word.
So if you can't remember the word meeting, for example.
Right. Picture people gathered around a table talking, discussing things.
That visual might help you access other related words that you do know.
Exactly. You might think of discussion or gathering or get together.
So it's about shifting your focus from the word to the idea.
Precisely.
And the last piece of this emergency strategy is to choose simpler words.
Yes. If a complex term is escaping, you don't be afraid to use a more basic way to express the same thing.
So instead of board meeting, you could say big business talk.
Exactly. In the moment, clear communication is what matters most.
It's a good reminder that you don't have to be perfect to be understood.
Absolutely.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Why thinking in English is so beneficial. The pitfalls of translation, those quick 5-minute exercises, the daily habits, and even what to do when you get stuck.
Yeah, it's a whole toolkit for rewiring your brain.
And as we've emphasized throughout, it's all about consistency.
Right, these techniques aren't magic bullets, but with regular practice, they can make a huge difference.
One of the things that really resonated with me in the materials you sent was that question, what's the first object you will consciously label in English today?
That's a great one.
It's such a simple action, but it encourages you to put these ideas into practice right away.
Exactly, and that's where the real learning begins.
So as you go about your day, think about that question. What's the first thing you'll name in English? Maybe it's your phone, maybe it's your coffee cup, maybe it's the tree outside your window.
And as you continue to practice these techniques, you might find that thinking in English doesn't just improve your fluency, it actually opens up new ways of seeing the world.
It's like you're stepping into a new mindset.
Exactly, and who knows where that might lead you.
The possibilities are endless. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all of you listening, Keep those questions and those amazing materials coming. We love exploring them with you.
Yeah, we do.
Until next time, happy Englishing.
Bye, everybody.